Hey guys, what's up? It's Brian at Two Indians, and we're going to install some mid-rise bars by KST Custom today. These are the Commanche bars, and although KST makes a variety of different bars for all makes and models, including this new 2022 Challenger I have here, you can find just about anything you want on their website. Go check them out. They've got great stuff. They've been in business for a long time. So if you're not familiar with our channel, we produce a lot of content on rides, reviews, and how-to videos, focusing mainly on the Indian brand, as well as Barbara's sexy new Can-Am Spider RT. But enough about all that, let's get to these handlebars. So I've come to love having a higher handlebar like I have on the Springfield here. I've discovered a couple years ago that I find this handlebar height far more comfortable for my neck by keeping my back in a better posture, whereas the factory type bars tend to pull me forward and make me bend my neck up like this. Look, we're all built differently. This is what works for me, and maybe it works for you. So first thing I always do on a bigger job like this is prep an area for tools and parts, and I have some basic folding tables that I use for that. I cover them with towels to avoid parts rolling or sliding around, and it helps keep them from getting scratched. I also like to protect the tank and fender or other parts with some tape or towels. I removed the windshield just in case, but it turns out it wasn't necessary, so you can leave it in place. Now we're going to start by pulling the front side of the fairing off, and that starts with pulling the front headlight trim off by using a trim tool to pry downward from the top. Now you have 3 screws in there to pull out, but let's just pull the 2 on the sides of the headlight and then loosen the top center screw to just finger tight. Next, we're going to come around to the back of the fairing, open up these little cubbies, and simply pull out the rubber inserts. We'll pop off the speaker grills by prying up with a trim tool. Now, if you don't have a trim tool set like this, I got this one on Amazon for about 25 bucks. I'll put a link down below, and this works great on your car or truck or whatever you got. Okay, so with the speaker grill off, you have a screw right here next to the speaker. You have one inside the cubby and one underneath on the bottom of the fairing, and that's 6 altogether, 3 on each side. Now the fairing is being held in place by that one screw up front still above the headlight. Go ahead and remove that now while supporting the fairing, but in reality it's still kind of held in place by some hooks on the top on the inside of the fairing. So to remove the front piece, just kind of lift and pull and wiggle it off a little bit. You'll have a few wiring harnesses to disconnect. Don't worry, they're all keyed differently, so you don't have to worry about getting them back together properly. Just pry them apart gently and the outer fairing will pull away. Next step is to remove the seat and tank. Basically, you just have to remove the top trim piece by pulling this screw and then slide the trim forward, unhooking the back portion, and then just kind of lift it off. You gotta kind of finagle it out from underneath the dash here. Disconnect the fuel and ventilation hoses from the tank and then the wiring harness. Unbolt the rear of the tank, keeping track of how these bolts should go back in. Now the real pain in the behind is the hoses and wires that are zip tied under the tank onto these little hooks. So use something to prop up the tank or get someone to help you, and then you can reach up under there to snip off the zip ties and then just slide the tank back and up to remove. Let me tell you, that was not easy. I tried to use this to kind of prop it up and pry it up, but that didn't work. So now I'm gonna just try to move this off of here. And there we go. Whew. Now you can remove the clutch lever assembly and just kind of let it rest on the floorboard. Then I went after the brake lever by pulling these two screws, and then be careful to keep the brake reservoir in an upright position. I used a couple of zip ties somewhere, and that's convenient to keep it in its position. Next I went after the switch housings, and they're pretty simple too, just two screws on the outside cover piece. And then two screws on the actual mechanism. Then you kind of open it like a clam, and you'll see some connectors for the wire and cabling that you'll just want to gently pry out. Again, they're all keyed differently, so no need to obsess over which ones go where. Once you get these apart, the grips for the throttle and the brake just slide off. Now go back to the front of the bike and just kind of follow the wires from the bars and make sure they're disconnected, so when you start pulling the bars loose, the wires will just follow out. Next, you're going to remove the handlebar mounting bracket, and that's simply two large 19mm bolts that go up from the bottom through the triple tree. Now if you don't have a 19mm, a 3/4 inch is the same exact size. So just do what you got to do to get those out using either an open end or box end or a socket, and the bars will slide right out after you loosen those up. Hey, have some lunch. You're probably getting hungry about now. And in the meantime, you could watch some commercials. Doesn't that sound fair? Okay, next you're going to want to have a large, clear surface to work on. And you can do this on a table or on the floor, but I'm old, so I use the table. Pull the throttle assembly and the wires out of one side and then the other. I mark the cables with a T for throttle and B for brake. Now there's a bar end weight on the brake side, and you'll need to pull this out. More on that later. Now here's the tricky part, getting the cabling back into the new handlebars. And everyone has their own way of doing this, and I've seen people use an air compressor to blow a pull string through the bars. But I'm an old electrician type of guy, and the way we get string through conduit is to suck it through with a shop vac. Just put a little ball on one end of the string, block up any holes that reduce the suction, and let the vacuum pull the string through. Use some stout string because you're going to need it. Don't use a cheap thread or anything like that. Now you're going to relocate the mounting bracket from one set of bars to the other, and you'll need to be very conscious of its orientation as far as which part of the bars go to the front and the back of the bike. So I just laid the bars out and removed half of the bracket, leaving the other half laying on the table, and then I laid the new bars basically back into the same position. Conveniently, the new bars are made so the bracket centers itself up nicely on its own. Leave these screws finger tight at this point. Okay, now let's get the wires in, and yes, these bars have a crazy angle on them. But these are 1.5 inches, I think, so just make sure that you make the end as low profile as you can, and you can loop the string around the wiring harness like this, so when you pull it, it actually tightens as you pull. Anyway, wrap it up nicely with tape. Normally I'd use electrical tape, but I couldn't find my roll. But just push and pull firmly without wrecking it, and the harness will pull through. Next, line up this hole with the bracket, leaving only 3/8 of an inch above the hole to the bracket. A small deviation will raise or lower the bars, but using this measurement as a guide will put the bars at almost a perfect level point for the proper alignment of your hands on the switch housings. Remember, all this stuff is machined and keyed precisely, so the ergonomics work. You can adjust to raise or lower the bars later. Just shoot for this measurement for now. Once you have this buttoned up, you can install the bars back on the bike with the 19mm screws through the triple tree. It's a weird angle, and once again, a second set of hands would be helpful, but if you're like me, that's not possible sometimes. Regardless, I'm living proof it can be done on your own.
Alright, so I actually got a pair of the Indian Select grips because I don't like those standard rubber grips. So it looks like one is definitely for brake and one is for throttle.
Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going into all the detail of installing each clamshell and grip and wiring connectors and switch housing, etc. They only go on one way. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but you just kind of have to keep fiddling with it and you'll get everything to mount together, just reversing the process from before.
Good.
Just keep checking to make sure that everything feels right as you go.
Those are different than what's on your bike.
Well, they have to be.
Now on the clutch side, there's this bar
Pointy
end
and
weight
weird.
intended to reduce vibration, and I did put it back in the bar, but damn it if the other grip would not fit with the switch assembly, and it literally took me an hour to figure it out and simply
Get
would
on.
not work. I removed the weight and everything went together fine. I have not felt any ill effects of not having the weight in there, by the way. Once you have this back together, just double check and make sure everything is super snug and tight, because next you're reinstalling the tank and the seat.
Woo!
Now when you're ready to put the fairing back on the front, you can rest the fairing on the front fender while you reconnect the cables and then reassemble them the way you took her apart. And guess what? Boom, you're done.
Alright, well I'm done. Sorry I didn't show you all the stuff where it goes back together, but it's just kind of a repeat of the same process. How long did this take? Let's see. It's exactly 5 o'clock now. I started about 9:30 this morning, but I got interrupted going to pick up Barbara, going to get a battery for my bike for the Springfield. But yeah, this took every bit of six to 7 hours. A couple stupid mistakes on my part, trying to put the wrong screw in the wrong hole, stuff like that. Putting the dash back together. I scratched my fuel filler cap trying to get this trim piece back on. I'm really not happy about that. I barely brushed it, but that's it. I'm done. I'm gonna go take it for a spin. Oh, let me tell you, it feels so good to have my arms back up in the air. The posture, it makes my posture so much better. Oh yes. Oh. Might roll them down just a smidge. I sat on my buddy Ronnie's bike. He has the KST bars also. About 6 months ago, I think. Well, it was probably a year ago, really. And it just felt so perfect. And I got my highway pegs on. I got my mid-rise bars up. Oh man, this just feels so good. This is everything that I wanted it to be. You know, the thing I like about these bars also is that it makes me feel like I'm sitting down in the bike, because, you know, it makes my visible plane up higher, and the feeling of sitting in it is way better than sitting on top of it, which is what I had before. And honestly, the seating position hasn't changed. Nothing's changed except what I see, which is the bars in front of me, and what I feel, which is my hands up higher, and it's just absolute perfection. If you haven't tried it, you gotta try it. There's my girl back there. Wave, Barbara. Yeah, she's a two hands on the wheel kind of lady. Oh, I tell you, it was worth all the effort. Maybe even worth the scratch on the fuel filler cap. Didn't have to change any of the brake levers or the clutch cable. Didn't have to get a new cabling harness for the wires, for the throttle, for the cluster.